On our side now will be the chairman of the Financial Services Committee Subcommittee on Capital Markets, who's been working hard on this issue, Mr. Kanjorski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, the white paper requires that the SEC and the CFTC make recommendations on harmonizing their statutes and regulations by the end of September. And as you know, we have been meeting with the two regulators and yourself and representatives of the Treasury Department over the last several weeks. It seems they've made tremendous progress on many things, but I think it's clear that on some things they themselves will not come to a resolution. And I'm just curious if you could give us some insight, particularly because of the timing of all this. You mentioned 4 or 5 different positions people have taken, and I didn't fit in any of those categories. I'm in favor of comprehensive reform, but taking our time to make sure we don't cause unintended consequences. And with that in mind, have you, in your mind, formulated what you would do, or have you considered a joint task force of Treasury and the Congress in a positioned position to start formulating what if they don't agree on certain issues, what positions we can take to help facilitate the moving of this legislation on a faster track?
We would like to come to you with a recommendation before the deadline we put in the white paper, which was the end of September, because we know we want you to move. You want to move forward more quickly on this, and I agree with you. They've made a lot of progress, but they're not there yet. And what we're doing is working closely with both agencies to try to explore options and bring them together in a position both can support. But in that process, as you know, we're consulting very closely with both these committees so that we're working in parallel to a point that it's going to be not just do we have them together with the Treasury on a common position, but that we're more likely to find a common ground that both your committees can support. But we're not quite there yet.
Well, I appreciate that, and of course anything that we can do on the congressional side, we offer our assistance, because I'm getting a little pessimistic as to whether or not the deadlines we're setting are going to be met, and not that that would be tragic if they're not met, but we're causing great expectations constantly with these deadlines that make it look a little difficult, or perhaps the perception that we're not being as successful as we hope we can be. Mr. Secretary, have you given up, and has the administration given up on the long-term perspective of joining these two agencies together, the SEC and the CFTC?
There are a lot of compelling reasons made by people in this room and many others over a long period of time for merging both those agencies. Our judgment is a necessary condition, and the most important, in some ways the hardest thing to do, is to bring the underlying statutes and laws into conformity and convergence. We think that's the most important thing to do, in part because, as your colleague Chairman Frank said, the critical test of whether we do enough to improve the system is going to be what we do to the basic constraints and incentives, the substance of regulation. So what we propose in the white paper to do is to begin with that task, which we think is going to be enormously difficult and complicated, and that would provide a better basis for the Congress to consider institutional reforms in the future.
So you're not cutting short the fact, you're anticipating that we're going to do these preliminary reforms and then continue on over a series of years with better reform?
Well, I think that's a judgment you'd have to make, but I think there is enormous value and this was an enormously complicated task, in bringing those underlying statutes into conformity so that you don't have different standards, different entities, different enforcement authority over what are economically very similar types of products.